Much appreciated. That's Afro Worldview reporter Patisa Mfuyo, who's out tracking the ANC 8th elective conference out in KwaZulu-Natal. And it's a story that we'll follow up for you very closely. We're also joined on the line now to discuss the various conferences that are taking place in the ruling party. We have political analyst Ongama Mdika, who joins us over the phone line. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for joining us. I think first, let's just reflect on the KwaZulu-Natal conference that potentially being threatened of not even taking place today. It seems that a lot has been achieved so far with the Tumamina spirit, renewal and unity as a front.
I think that the conference is still proceeding, and in fact it seems like after the court interdict failed, it seems like all systems go for the voting. I wasn't sure whether the credentials have been accepted yet. I couldn't hear your reporter, but the undertaking that's been given by the national deployees that voting was going to take place tonight still is noted. The ANC, this is in crunch time now, because you remember that they've been given a July 27 deadline, all the provinces. So it's important that they reach this milestone.
Why it is important for this particular process to be properly vetted is to avoid any suspicion that there may be something untoward, or those voting delegates not being legitimate or even authorized by their branches.
Indeed, you do find that the importance of due process and legality does tend to take prominence during the ANC conferences, with people mindful of the legal risks and the threat of litigation following the aftermath of these conferences. And they cannot afford to have that as a party in general, because elections are around the corner. They want to get on with the program of elections. And if you look at support in KZN, maybe to a less extent, but the ANC, if you look at certain municipalities where it had consolidated its support, it started losing some support in 2016. In Gauteng, it was pushed well below 50%, I think around 46% in terms of the average. So they need to make sure that the outcome from this process is as widely accepted as possible by the delegates, so that it is not challenged in court and derail the ANC's ability to recover and run an effective campaign.
And speaking of how the party, and I suppose the fault lines have been drawn in how you manage conflict or dissatisfaction, especially when it comes to the outcomes of an elective conference. We heard ANC Ekurhuleni chair suggesting that there is a bankrolling of some of these members, of those that have vested interest in wanting to see the party disintegrate.
You know, the disappointing thing is that the ANC has long diagnosed this problem. Where it is failing is in leading courageously to do the right thing. So, for example, as far back as 2001, it came up with leadership documents that will help select leadership. In Mangaung, it came up with an integrity commission whose power and effectiveness was supposedly boosted with the last conference. But it's all talk. So you got the right documents, you've got the right resolution, but the failure is in ensuring that it follows through and makes sure that processes are managed well. And I think part of the reason why they allow it to be like this is because ANC election outcomes are actually top-down, notwithstanding the speak that power is in the branches. You would have seen that, for example, there's been complaints about the interference of national members in these provincial conferences. Likewise, in provinces, you will find that provincial as well as regional power brokers attempt to control and dictate to branches what the outcomes should be. So until the ANC reforms at the fundamentally how it manages the process of, for example, vetting branches and making sure that branch general meetings happen. It is always going to continue to face these problems. So now, for example, when you find that a conference proceeds and there's no longer challenges, it doesn't say that everything has been done according to the book, but the powers that be are happy enough that whatever misnomers may be are not affecting them that much when it comes to the outcome of the conference.
We're going to have to leave it there, Dr. Mtimka. Thank you so much for your time. That's Ongama Mtimka, the political analyst, just reflecting on the elective conferences of the ANC. And joining us on the phone line is Professor Bere Hanyane, a political analyst. He's also a professor with the University of the Northwest. Prof, good evening to you, and as always, thank you so much for joining us. Seemingly that message of unity again is echoes and permeates through the party and adoption of its policy for the 54th elective conference. Is this, in your view, superficial, or is the ANC indeed on a path of renewal?
Good evening, Cindy. Good evening to your viewers. Look, I think it's notable that the path to promote rhetoric, especially in the Johannesburg conference, the Gauteng conference, seems to be the undertone of a lot of positions taken by different speakers. In relation to your question, it is important that the governing party puts in place systems and processes that for once would then shape this unity that they call for. The time for rhetoric, given the position that we are in, especially looking forward to 2019, cannot be entertained. One would then want to see the governing party putting people in this will drive certain processes. It's quite notable that the Premier of Gauteng, Mr. Makura, spoke about the importance of education in the governing party, that it has done so much. I am yet to see the tangible results that that process gives, because that will be a fundamental tool to use to drive unity in the ANC.
And his response to cadre deployment, and I suppose this had been an ammunition for the opposition in suggesting that cadre deployment leads to the erosion of good governance and it leads to corruption, etc., that this is generally how political parties would deploy, members or appoint members. So it's nothing untoward. But he did mention that best international practices are being learned to ensure that the right caliber of leaders are put in positions.
Cindy, I think this country, we have the best brains, the best minds who can assist in ensuring that systems such as cadre deployment are configured well, are implemented well. The problem lies, and I think Mr. Mbalula today alluded to this, that if you don't have strong systems of vetting, for instance, although he used this as an analysis to the issue of the arresting of one of the members in Luthuli House, one can borrow that argument and apply it in the ANC structures and how it operates. That when you deploy a person, do you vet that person in terms of integrity, in terms of qualifications, in terms of experience, in terms of track record, most importantly? Because there comes a moment where people who did not do well in their previous positions in the name of the ANC strategically might fail the ANC as they are being deployed in another strategic position, which then taints the system as a system that is not workable, as a system that is there basically to advance interest of a certain slate over the interest of the governing party.
And those are some of the dynamics, as you're saying, that the party had to reflect on and take stock of its weaknesses, especially in light of 2019. But we heard from the acting chair in Gauteng saying that the official opposition, in fact, has become a very benign threat. What is your view to that?
Well, look, I'd like to believe that there are cracks in the Gauteng leadership, the Gauteng constituency, and I wouldn't be surprised if opposition parties would want to gun for Gauteng as a way, basically, to demonstrate symbolically that they are in for the run in the coming elections. I mean, they have done so through the takeover of Tshwane, the takeover of City of Johannesburg. They came close to take over of Ekurhuleni. I don't see them losing the award in front of them. They would go at it relentlessly, and the ANC is up for a serious battle. One would also argue that perhaps the Eastern Cape, there could be cracks there as well. I heard the DA also gunning for the Northern Cape. So the ANC must basically put a watch on these provinces, of which opposition parties will stop at nothing to make sure that they win votes there.
Professor Hanyane, as always, thank you so much for your insight. That's Professor Barry Hanyane. He is with the University of the Northwest and a political analyst joining us as we look at the ANC elective conferences currently underway. We'll keep you up to speed with the latest details as those emerge. For now, though, we'll take a quick break. We'll see you shortly.